You've done it. You're holding your shoes in your hand so they don't click on the hardwood, and you're taking one slow, careful breath. The doorknob turns at the speed of cold honey, and for a single beautiful second, you actually think you've pulled it off. Then the floorboard creaks. Your whole body goes rigid, your breath gets shallow, and you pray they didn't hear it. Maybe they're still focused on the cartoon, and maybe, just this once, the universe is actually on your side. It never is, but hope is free. Mama? And there it is. That one word drifts in from the other room, and your chest drops about 6 inches. You weren't being cruel in that hallway. You were just running on empty, and a tantrum felt like the one thing you genuinely could not survive today. So you tried to manage around the feeling instead of moving through it. That isn't bad parenting, it's just exhausted parenting. But here's what nobody tells you about that moment. Every time we sneak around the emotional spike, we aren't cooling the room. We're breaking the sensor. There are 4 habits most gentle parents do every single week that quietly teach their child the same thing, that their feelings are a problem to be avoided, not a temperature to be survived. And the sneaky exit is just the beginning. Habit 1. The sneaky exit. When you slip out without a word, what you're trying to avoid is the tantrum, but what you're actually teaching them is that the world disappears without warning. The way your child feels safe isn't looking for a calm house. It's wired to answer one question on a loop. Am I safe? Or are you gone? That's it. When you leave through the front door with a hug and an honest goodbye, the answer they hear is safe and returning. When you evaporate while they're distracted by a cartoon, the answer their nervous system files away isn't calm. It's threat with no explanation. The thermostat doesn't read your intentions. It only reads what actually happened. And this holds even if your child is too young to understand a single word you're saying. Drop them at daycare, at preschool, wherever, and they don't need the vocabulary to feel the gap. They need the pattern. The panic isn't about missing the sentence. It's about looking up and realizing you're just gone. No warning, no goodbye, nothing to hold on to. That gap between here and not here gets filed away as danger, whether or not they could ever repeat back what you said. You kept things quiet for 30 seconds, but you may have cost yourself something much bigger down the road. The replacement isn't complicated, and it isn't a long goodbye either. A drawn-out farewell, extra hugs, hovering by the door, actually stirs up more worry, not less, because you're telegraphing that this is a big deal. The fix is short and confident. You say, "I'm leaving now. I'll be back after your nap." And it's okay to feel sad about that. Then you leave, even if they cry. You leave except if they cry, because that short spike of distress is exactly how kids learn to handle change. They feel it, they move through it, and they learn it settles back down on its own. The sneak exit skips all of that. They never get the chance to learn that you come back because they never registered that you left in the first place. A child who hears honest goodbyes every single time eventually stops melting at drop-off, not because they stopped caring, but because they finally trust the return. So tonight, if you have to walk out that door, say it out loud. "I'm leaving. I'll be back after your nap." Even if it costs you 2 minutes of crying, that's the whole ritual. Say it. Mean it. Go. But the sneaky exit has a quieter cousin, and it's one that looks even more like good parenting. Habit 2. The just one more loop. Here is a finding that stopped me the first time I read it. Children who live with inconsistent limits do not actually rate their parents as more loving, but instead, they rate them as less safe. This does not happen eventually or over years, because the very moment the line moves once, the room stops feeling like it has walls. And you know exactly where this one lives. It is 7:43 p.m. at the park. Or it is the third bedtime request for a glass of water. Or it is the moment the screen time alarm goes off and you look at their face and realize you have nothing left for this fight tonight. Toddlers can smell exhaustion, the way sharks smell blood in the water. So no becomes, okay, 5 more minutes. And 5 minutes later, it becomes 5 more. And somewhere in that loop, you stopped being a parent setting a limit and became a hostage negotiator trying to keep everyone calm until morning. This habit is not a sign of weakness, but rather it is love running on fumes, trying to delay the heat because there is genuinely nothing left in the tank. That matters. And it also does not change what the behavior teaches them. When no consistently becomes maybe, the child never learns where the line actually holds. They are always testing and always slightly anxious, not because they are difficult, but because the line has moved before and they have no reason to believe it would stop moving now. The boundary is not the opposite of warmth. The boundary is the warmth. It tells them the room has walls, and walls mean shelter. The replacement script is short on purpose. You say, I know you want more. The answer is no. I am right here while you are mad about it. That last sentence is doing all the heavy lifting, because you are not abandoning them inside the feeling. You are just not moving the line while you are in there with them. That tiny pause at the bedroom door is how you teach tomorrow's goodbye. So tonight, pick one thing you know you'll want to bend on. Maybe it's the extra 5 minutes or the second glass of water. And hold it exactly once. Say the line, sit through the mad face, and don't move the line. Now, here is that gets interesting, because the next 2 habits do not involve saying the wrong thing. They involve doing too much of the right thing too soon. Habit 3, the preemptive peacekeeper. Picture the moment right before it happens. The sibling's hand drifts toward the toy while your child has not even noticed yet, still lining up blocks and still somewhere else entirely. But you have noticed, and before the moment fully arrives, you are already moving and already smoothing it over, redirecting and fixing something that has not happened yet. This is not helicopter parenting, but it is love moving faster than thought. Remember the shoes in your hand? This is the same moment. It is the same instinct to smooth the floor before anyone even trips. The strange part is this. The most helpful thing you can do looks exactly like doing nothing. There is a Japanese concept called mimamoru. It means watching while waiting. It is the practice of holding back deliberately so the child can find their own footing before you offer yours. It sounds simple, but it is genuinely one of the hardest things to do when you are standing 3 feet away watching their face scrunch up with frustration. Doing nothing, on purpose, is somehow one of the most tiring things you'll do all day. But here's what the research actually shows. The moment of struggle, the hard part right before you'd normally step in, is where confidence actually gets built. It does not happen in the rescue, but in the 5 seconds before it, which is where the brain is doing the real work. When you arrive, before those 5 seconds are up, you are not helping them, but you are installing a backup generator before the power even flickers. They never get to learn that they can survive a blackout. The replacement is a ritual, not a script. Wait 5 seconds longer than feels comfortable, and let them look for the solution before you offer one. Your stillness in that moment is not indifference, but a signal. It tells them that you are not worried, which tells them there is nothing to be worried about. A child who is allowed to feel the flicker learns, slowly and reliably, that the lights always come back on. So tonight, when you feel that urge to jump in, count to 5 in your head first. That's it. 5 seconds of doing nothing, on purpose. Habit 4, the rescue mission. Who is the rescue actually for? Sit with that one for a second. Because this last habit is the one most parents won't even recognize as a habit. It looks exactly like being there for your child. Picture them wrestling with a zipper or sounding out a word that just won't come. Maybe they're standing on the edge of a group at the playground, not quite knowing how to get in, and their face does that thing where the frustration starts gathering behind their eyes. Watching a toddler fight a zipper is its own special kind of patience test. Something in your chest pulls toward them like a reflex, and you move in to fix it. It feels like you are helping them. It even looks compassionate. But watch carefully. Who gets relief first? Them or you? Here is the honest version of what is happening in that moment. You are not rescuing them. You are rescuing yourself from the unbearable feeling of watching them struggle. That is not a criticism, because that is just what love does when it hasn't been told to wait. But when you move in before they have had a chance to try, you are blowing on their soup before they even know it is hot. They never build a tolerance for the heat. Frustration tolerance isn't a personality trait they either have or don't have. It's a skill that gets built every single time they push through something hard in a small, safe dose. Every time you arrive too soon, that skill stays exactly where it was. The replacement script is just one sentence. That looks tricky, and I am right here if you need me, but I want to see how you handle it first. Then you stay close and you stay quiet. You are present, but not intervening. And you are near, but not in control. This is Mimamoru in its simplest form. It isn't a philosophy. It is just a posture. This is why tomorrow's hallway matters. Because confidence isn't built by being told you are capable. It is built by surviving the moment you weren't sure you were. So tonight, when the zipper won't zip or the shoe won't tie, say the line. Then close your mouth. Stay close, stay quiet, and let them get there on their own. So next time you are standing at that door with shoes already in your hand, remember that the tantrum you are bracing for is just the thermostat trying to calibrate. Your job isn't to prevent the heat, but to stay in the room while it passes. Pick one of these 4 habits this week. Just one. Notice the moment it appears, and don't try to fix it or spiral. Just pause for 5 seconds longer than feels right. Tomorrow you will probably still hear crying. That is okay, because for the first time, you won't hear failure. The goal was never a quieter child. It was a calmer nervous system. Those are not the same thing. You will hear a thermostat doing exactly what it was designed to do.